And they're working on stained glass right over there, so... Paris to the past, day 1, Saint Denis. Take the Metro Line 13 to the Basilica Saint Denis. The Monarchy, the Gothic Cathedral.
Ina speaks of the ugliness of Saint Denis and its surrounds when she first visited in the 70s, but then how beautiful it has become. The area was a bit under construction when we were here, but it wasn't trashy. It's a very convenient and close walk from the train station, and there's good signage getting you there. This is the burial basilica of the French monarchy. Louis I, II, and XI were not buried here, but all the rest of the monarchs from the 10th century through the 18th were, and a bunch of the pre-10th century as well. The legend of Saint Denis is that he had his head chopped off in Paris, picked up his own head, and carried it to the site of this cathedral, then lay down and died. I guess that's enough of a miracle to justify canonization.
One of the first things Anna taught us about the name Suger, he's the father of the Gothic Cathedral, the Franken monarchy, and the main driving force behind the creation of this building. His biggest idea was to bring aesthetic beauty and the riches into his church, which was bucking the trends of his contemporaries. The thought had always been that the church was a somber place for spiritual reflection, and pretty things don't belong in church. And in fact, the Roman churches were very blank. They had no windows inside, and the altar wall was plain. It was dark and damp, actually. Now, Suger was a marketer. He was an abbot, a statesman, an advisor to the great, but he wasn't afraid to take half-truths and use them to create brand new, well-documented, quote-unquote facts to further his ends. And his ends were almost always in line with those of his betters. Now, nowadays, we would call that spin. Suger did that too, because it was a time of feudal lords, and he wanted to connect the kings that were getting elected among the feudal lords to like the church and use the church for their own power. So it was a way in.
If any of you are fans of the great James Burke series, The Day the Universe Changed, you are going to love Anna Caro's treatment of French medieval history, especially this chapter on Saint Denis, with the movements and mindset of Suger as he gathers the elements needed to create his masterpiece. His actions set in motion huge changes in the church and the monarchy. There had been painted glass before, Suger, but Saint Denis has the first actual stained glass windows. There had been buttresses elsewhere in architecture, but Suger brought the flying buttress to Saint Denis, creating the opportunity for huge window areas that weren't available in the Romanesque cathedrals of the time. When the other bishops saw this, they all had cathedral envy, and suddenly a lot of convenient fires took place. Saint Denis inspired the cathedrals at Lyon, Chartres, Rennes, Notre Dame, Sainte-Chapelle, among others.
A good example of Suger's marketing genius is that he gathered the stories of several versions of Saint Denis and combined them to create a whole new legend, inspiring the monarchs and bishops of the time to create his Suger's vision of this place, the cathedral. Another great insight from Ina's book that she credits to her husband is that Denis is French for Dionysus. Now, Dionysus is a god of theater and of wine, and that long before the basilica was imagined in this area, there was indeed a wine-growing region. Does that explain the name? And is the legend of Saint Denis all just marketing? Blasphemy!
My theater peeps, if any of you have ever seen or been involved in a production of The Lion in Winter, this part of the story will prick up your ears. In 1137, Louis the Fat sent Suger to Poitiers to ensure the marriage of his son Louis to Eleanor of Aquitaine. And here is a major linchpin in my education of French history. I can now tie what was happening here in France with what I already knew was happening in England. Here we are at Saint Denis.
In the garden.
In the garden outside of Saint Denis. and it was a little overwhelming for me. It's probably important to come here because you get the full sweep of French history, but you get the full sweep of French history. It's a lot to take in.
Their family?
I'm sure I did it backwards, or at least parts of it was backwards, because it was very difficult to follow which direction you're supposed to go through at, so that it manages to keep up with the audio.
But they're right about the color and the light, and the stained glass is just beautiful.
Pretty amazing, yeah.
Yeah, and it would have been something to see the difference between that and the original, very dark churches they had before, with the blank
and the old
walls.
Romanesque versions. Definitely, you want to go outside. We almost missed going out to what they call the Medieval Jardin. Go outside and go around to the back and see what's going on out here. It's just very pleasant and very.
And you can rest, put your feet up.
As long as it's sunny when you're here. We're here. It's nice and sunny.
You can visit the garden and see what a medieval garden is like. And they're working on stained glass right over there. So